for asking. That was nice.
So yes, I think we are live. I'm here with my new friend Mike. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing very well. Thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Well, yeah, we met on PodMatch, and I've been telling the world about PodMatch because it's filled up my whole calendar until Christmas. Like my calendar is full because of
Wow.
PodMatch. How long have you been on there?
I want to say a year.
Wow, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And has
Let's
it
see. And I mean,
has it paid off for you?
yeah, I've had a couple misses, and I've learned how to screen for that, and that's, yeah.
Oh, okay. So there are all kinds of people out there in the,
Uh-oh.
oops.
Is this my problem?
Your face is not moving, so either you're a ventriloquist or you got a tech problem. Reconnect, rejoin the call. You can hang up and rejoin the call if you need to. Here, let me see if I can boot him off. I'll boot him off. Rejoin. Now I'm going to rejoin. Join now. Okay. Hello? 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 Hello, hello, hello. Are you there? Let's try again. Rejoin now. Hello? 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 We'll figure this out. Bear with us. Let me see if there's anything in my email. Rejoin. Do. Hello?
All
Hey,
right. Okay.
we're
Bye.
back. We're back.
Hey, sorry. My wife is streaming downstairs, and I told her to stop, so that should prevent this from happening. I'm very sorry.
Not a problem. Okay, so she was eating up all your bandwidth.
Yes, I believe so.
Tell her to pick up a book off the bookshelf and go old school. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
She can do what she wants to
No, I
do.
don't care at all. No, I'm the one who left my daughter in front of the television to come upstairs. This is all on me.
So listen, I on my podcast I like to talk about your story from the beginning until today, sort of the journey, the voyage. I didn't learn too much about you because I like to discover on the fly, but I'd like to
Mhm.
know sort of where you were in terms of faith, philosophy, those sorts of things, headspace, from a very young child up until today, all the twists and turns. And I saw a couple of bullet points on your bio that were very interesting, but I didn't want to dig too deep. I'll let you tell the story.
All right. Okay, so I'll start here and then I'll go way back and get back to here.
Oh,
So
okay.
currently, I'm a pretty darn spiritual person, but it's pretty private and I don't like boast it or advertise it. But all my friends would know it about me. And I write, I'm a public figure. So I have like a spiritual component to the work I do. But I cannot stress this enough. It's not a religious component, it's spiritual. And the reason I'm specifying that is because my story will explain that. So I am not by any means anti religion, and most people I know are actually religious. So it's not a here or there. It's just in my worldview, the way I got here, I can't help but say I'm spiritual. And so I think at the earliest memory I have, when I was about 4 or 5, my parents told me I was Jewish. That didn't mean much to me, but as I got a little older, I realized I was like the only Jewish kid in a town full of all Christians, and I didn't care. But we would go to like this synagogue, like that was for 3 or 4 different towns where I grew up. I grew up next to Berkeley, California, which
Oh,
probably matters to people listening because it's a very atheistic place. And so when I'm saying like I was Jewish and I met Christians, that's like saying I put a fleck of salt on my meal. Like there's not really a lot of like genuine religion where I grew up. And it's very ordinary to hear people publicly say like religious people are stupid. This country is being ruined by like the right wing Christians. So like as a child, not understanding what these things mean, I definitely was informed to like not really appreciate religion. And so my brother, when he was 8 and I was 6, or when he was 10 and I was 8, I'm not really sure. He just one day told my parents like I don't want to keep going to Hebrew school, which is for Jewish kids to learn enough Hebrew to fake this thing called a bar mitzvah, so you can say you're Jewish. That of course is my version of that. I didn't really care and I didn't know better, but I knew that I hated going to this place after school twice a week, and I knew 2 people in the group because they also went to my school, but I wasn't like close with either of them. So I just was like, yeah, I'll quit too. So that's it. That's the end of my religion in my life. I was either 8 or 6. I don't really remember, but that's the last time. Then in school it was kind of like fun to be different at a certain point. So I would say I was Jewish, but all we did was celebrate Hanukkah once a year and maybe have like a Passover Seder. And that always stuck because the Seder as a kid is like boring and hard and difficult, and like it stands out. And so in a weird way, it's almost like a rite of passage, like to brag to myself that I could like sit through this awful meal where you like dip parsley in salt water and like stare at food that you can't eat yet. And then for 6, 7, 8 days or something, you can't eat leavened bread. And so all of these memories just kind of swirl in my head as like happy and funny. But I definitely never, ever once in my life have I not felt that I am but a small part of something larger, and that I am definitely fully aware at all times of the difference between right and wrong. It's never once crossed my mind that like this is morally ambiguous. It never has. It never will. That led to a certain like nice streak in me that prevented me from like going down a real bad path, but it didn't stop me from like experimenting with pot, like having premarital sex. Like so I am by American terms a pretty normal person, but I think what would always stand out is like I definitely didn't help my friends steal cigarettes from behind the counter like that one time when we were like 15. Like little moments stand out in my life as like, okay, you feel a presence greater than yourself and you respond to it, and I've never mistreated like a person intentionally in my whole life, and even unintentionally. Oh no, that's not true. I definitely got mad at a friend in high school and made his life hell for about a year, so I take that back. I have intentionally been mean to one person. I remember quite vividly now. So but my point is, there was definitely like a moral compass, and that moral compass to this day has never changed. And that's why I say like I'm definitely openly spiritual. And then also, coincidence or not, in my early 20s I would experiment with psychedelics. I was in college, I had friends, and we just did mushrooms and acid. Not like a huge amount, but enough that I had enough trips that I was like, okay, if this little thing in a LSD tablet form, or this like organic mushroom that grows naturally on Earth, can actually flip my consciousness to the point where I feel differently, I see differently, I perceive differently, I love differently, and you know, all those trips combined, no matter what, the only message was like the corniest Beatles message ever, which is all you need is love. I mean, no matter what I took, I would get to this point where it's just like love everybody and be loved, like both. So I'm more of like a masochist, have trouble loving myself person, and I'm very easy to fall in love with my friends and anyone. So I like say I love you to people who I know, and then they kind of look at me like awkwardly, but I can tell they appreciated it. I have no fear of that word. And so if I did have a religion, it would just be like love. But okay, so I'm in my 20s. I've graduated college. I'm a hippie, but I'm also like working in restaurants, making a living, and playing in bands. And I'm pursuing a career in entertainment, which has always been my thing. So I've been a writer. I am a writer. I've been a filmmaker. I am a filmmaker. My point is, I don't really have one thing I love. I just love entertainment. So I've tried my hand at most things, and I love doing them. So I continue to. But along the way, I've always felt like I was destined to meet like my soulmate, as corny as that may sound to people, or as appropriate as it may sound. And so that was probably like the thorn in my side for most of my 20s and early 30s, was just trying to meet this person who I knew would feel right when I met her, and I knew it would work out. And it just didn't. So around 30 something, I decided that after a couple dates with a really nice girl who checked every box except that one I just mentioned, I decided to propose and get married. And I thought, this is it. There isn't that feeling you were looking for. There's just this, a really nice person who's smart, who you have a physical attraction to, who you like, who you get along with, similar sense of humor. So we got married, and we had I've always wanted kids. I mean, just like could not wait to have kids until, well, I shouldn't say that. I knew I had to be married and have a living. I wasn't rushing to have kids before I had those things under control. So I'm married. I actually own like a nice condo with her, and she's an American citizen, but she was actually Thai. So this is relevant. It's gonna be quickly explained why I'm going to bring this up. And so what that means is that she was born in America, and her parents were both here getting master's degrees, which is very typical for wealthy Thai people. Wealthy Thai people get undergraduate degrees in Thailand, and then they come to America to get a master's degree. Then they go back to Thailand. Sometimes they use it, sometimes they don't, but it's like a rite of passage. It's like a badge of honor. And so she was like from an upper class, very intelligent, like well-to-do family, living in San Francisco when I met her. We met in the same graduate program for teaching ESL. One thing led to another. We started dating. We got married. I was told by several friends who were in cross-cultural marriages, be careful. It's much harder than you think. It's just much harder than you think. You'll see. I'm not telling you don't get married, but it's much harder than you think. They should have yelled that at me. I would yell that at any person who's going down that road. I would not call it a plank. I would say it can work out, but it is true. It is undeniably difficult. By the way, feel free to interrupt whenever.
Yeah. No. I have plenty of questions when you're done. When you're done.
All right. Just want to make sure. I'm trying to. It's your show, and I
just well, since you brought me into it, I mean, I am married to a Greek woman, and
there you go.
it's got its pros and cons, but it's mostly pros. I mean, the Greek culture and the Western culture are pretty similar. It's nothing like the Thai or any sort of Asian thing, so it's not it's not really much, but it is interesting. I've learned a lot, and I've been shaped a lot by her and her Greekness, you know. Continue. You're doing a great job.
And actually my first time ever leaving the country was to go to Greece, so I have a huge affinity for
it's
Greece.
beautiful.
Absolutely love it. My parents were best friends with a Greek woman, and so we would interact a lot. But and I love traveling. I've been to like 30 something countries, but I can't stress this enough. I met my now ex-wife in America in a graduate program. There was no like, I love Asian culture, I go to Thailand all the time, I'm speaking Thai, like not at all. I was if anything, I was obsessed with Spanish and Latin America and like that part of the earth. So I am I wrestle with this all the time, and I have a son with her, and I love him, and so I'm always worried that he's gonna like hear things I say on these when he's older and like misinterpret them. So I'm careful when I speak, but like I will never know if we were in love or if we just had love. I can't possibly solve that, but what I can say, flashing way forward, is now I'm happily remarried, and I have one kid and a second on the way with my soulmate. And now that I know that that feeling was real, it does exist, and you can find it. The way I tell the story is different. So,
of course.
But in first person Mike mode of 2015, 16, my son is born. I'm with him every day. I am a very dutiful, good father. I go to work around 7:30. I get home at 4:30. I spend all evening with him, and I spend time with him in the morning if he's up. Not to say that my ex-wife wasn't doing an amazing job taking care of him all the time. I'm only pointing out that I was not like I have kids, darn it kind of dad. I was like very hands-on, spend my weekends, love my son. So we moved to Arizona because we were fighting a lot and we had no parental support. Her parents lived in Thailand, mine lived in Phoenix, Arizona. They had moved there when I was in my 20s. There's no connection or logical reason. So we moved to Phoenix, and we still continued to fight. And then most of the fights were over. We should move to Thailand. And I was saying, you promised me we could live in America for 7 years and then move to Thailand. Why do you bring it up every single day? And like, that's not really fair. This goes into cross culture. I don't think Thai people make promises and agreements the way Americans do. They're not transactional. Again, many lessons learned. I want to make sure I do due diligence to explain that while the behavior of my ex-wife after the fact is morally reprehensible in my book and most people's, I am not trying to claim that we weren't two people in a marriage fighting and arguing. So we got divorced. The custody agreement was the biggest hiccup in the divorce. Otherwise, the divorce was very amicable. She wanted much more custody, and I wanted joint custody. I wanted exactly half the time. We settled at, I got 3 days a week, she got 4. But we set it up so that he would never miss a day with either of us, if that makes sense. It was like certain nights at her house, mornings at mine. So there's always like, we saw him every day, and we thought that would be the nicest thing. The biggest fight we got in, and again, this is relevant for people listening, was of how we would split vacations for him to go to Thailand. I was warned by many people that if she went to Thailand with him, she would never return, that it happens a lot. It happens a lot in that culture. There's like 3 countries that are famous for it happening with American marriages specifically, and that was one of them. I was also told that Thailand doesn't play ball internationally. They don't follow treaties they've signed, even though they've signed them, such as the Hague International Child Abduction treaty. Can you guess where this story is going? For her birthday, the year of the divorce, I decided, what the heck? I will show her that I'm truly an amicable, nice human. So I gave her a free trip to Thailand a year early from the custody agreement to go there when he was 2. It was for 2 weeks exactly. It was they left 2 weeks after his second birthday. She called me and FaceTimed every day per our agreement, and then on the night she was supposed to fly back, because of the time difference, I went to sleep excited to wake up, drive to the airport, and pick them both up the next day. Instead, I woke up to an email that said my back hurts and a doctor told me not to fly. I thought that was peculiar, and then when I called, she wouldn't return the phone calls, so I tried to call her father. He said, I'll call you right back, and then he hung up and never returned my call and wouldn't pick up the phone. I called the State Department. They politely, but sort of like, they were very hard. Like they said, you should not have let your son go to Thailand, sir. Like, it was like very much like, the onus is on you. You've made a huge mistake. You're very unlikely to ever see. Here are some tips. And of course, we'll file an application with Thailand. But just so you know, in the 13 years of this treaty, they have never once even heard a case. So I hired lawyers. I did everything I could. I lost all my life savings. And they, only because they, no, I'm not going to presuppose I know why they did what they did. I'm lucky. They kept FaceTiming with me for a while. I got to see my son almost every day for the next 2 years over Skype. Then the calls got less and less frequent, and she stopped responding to all my emails, and they stopped, like, so I just mail letters to him. They call every once in a while. He calls me dad. He knows who I am. I send him gifts. I love him. I've sent like a million things to him. This is where I get spiritual. So after they left for Thailand and before she took him, do you understand? Like, there's this weird 2-week period of like nebulous life where I just decided, okay, you have 2 weeks free. You've been married and had kids for 7 years, like, 2 years with the kid, 5 years of marriage / dating. Why don't you just take like a trip to somewhere you've always wanted to go? And I'd been learning Spanish, so I decided to go to Ecuador. And not only did I want to go to Ecuador, but I had heard of this thing called ayahuasca plant medicine that now is
Oh,
very popular and very famous. But at the time, it was not popular and famous. And I'm not saying that in a bragging way. I'm just pointing out that, like, if you're going to stereotype me, please don't. I just had read a lot about this thing and I really wanted to try it. I had read that it's life changing and that you get in touch with like spiritual channels and things. So I was like all about it. So I went down there and I tried the thing 3 times, and man, does it work. Uh, the third time I did it, which is about 4 nights before my son was supposed to return, I had an unequivocal like channel with like something, and I would like to call it my higher self because for me that's the best way to explain it. How on earth would I know? Of course I don't. But I was talking to something in me and of me and with me. It was definitely not like God at the pearly gates and he's like a different entity talking to me. It was definitely like just kind of like this really quick ESP process. Like, there was no like language. And so the message I got was, your son, before he came to Earth, wanted to have a certain experience, and that experience was a life where he didn't have his father around when he was young. This is his request, and you agree to it. Whether you like it or not, your son is not going to be a part of your life while he's young. There's 2 ways to go about this: the kind way or the hard way. Up to you. And so I came home and I told my dad on a Friday night. He's supposed to come back on a Sunday night. I said, Dad, blah, 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 taking plant medicine, Ecuador. My dad's a cool guy. He's a hippie. He's awesome. So he looked at me and he's like, I hate to admit this, but that actually makes sense. Like, it makes sense for him to grow up in Thailand with his mom. It makes sense to like do this, even though it's going to be painful. But I'll tell you what, because my plan was I was going to let him grow up there, but he would take all his summer vacations and winter vacations here. So I'd see him, and then I would be able to travel there and see him as often as I want. He said, that's a great idea, but why don't you wait till he's 5? Like, what's the rush? He's not in school yet. Let him learn, formal American English here as well as Thai. Take these trips we've already organized. And then he's like, and furthermore, why don't you just wait like a couple months before you announce this to her? Like, just, sit on it. Like, you don't have to make this declaration now. And I was like, okay, fair enough. I'll wait. I'll wait till she comes back and I'll tell her in person. She never came back. I didn't get a chance to. She just took him. So the the Kool-Aid I drink every day so that I don't go insane is I just always come back to the spiritual position that like it or not, we make decisions before we're here, and then we have to comply with those decisions. And if we don't comply, you're just like pushing against something that's immovable, and you're going to experience a lot of resistance and conflict, and your life's going to be horrible. And I experienced that conflict. I fought them tooth and nail. It did nothing for me. I lost time, I lost hair and stress and youth, and most of all, because it is relevant, I lost like all my life savings. It put me back a lot. And I'm also trying to like start dating again, and I'm like running out of money as I'm trying to like date, and I'm living in Phoenix, Arizona, a place I never wanted to move, you know. And I owned a house, but I'd sold it and given her most of, you know, like we had, like I said, it was an amicable divorce, we figured things out. So uh so that led to my spiritual revolution. That led to like just this I hit my rock bottom, which is just like basic horrible depression. I wasn't drinking or doing super drugs or anything. I just was very sad, very, very sad, crying a lot. I'd never really cried. I thought crying was for sissies. You know, I had a lot of like, I'm 42. I just had a lot of like, boys don't cry. I grew up in the 80s mentality. So I started seeking self help, but I didn't have enough money to do like traditional therapy. So instead, I found like a group led by this wonderful woman, and I love to plug her everywhere I go. Her name is Lynn Bunch, and she's here in Phoenix, but she does Zoom calls and stuff. But at the time, I met her, and she just like gelled with me, and so she let me for free like audit some of her courses and stuff, and it was life changing. It was all about intuition, and the weirdest part is it synced up with my ayahuasca experience. Everything on that ayahuasca experience was in her like vocabulary and stuff like that, which is basically that we're spiritual beings having a human experience, and you're supposed to learn lessons here. Like, it's not, you're not doing it right if you're sitting on a couch avoiding all conflict. The hard conversations you have with your parents or your siblings or your ex-lovers or your current lovers, those are the meaning of life. Like, these interactions with other people specifically is the whole point of life, and that includes your son who isn't around, your ex-wife, your, you know.
So
So I will stop there.
how did you meet your current wife? Because you said you're married, happily married now.
Yeah.
So are you
Great.
allowed to talk about that? How you met
Oh yeah,
her
yeah,
and
for sure.
what happened there? Like, what is she like, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I think the best advice, I mean, you're happily married, so this is not to you, and I'm not trying to sound condescending or paternalistic, but I really would encourage every single human on earth, do not settle. Like, that person is out there. The problem is you might not meet them until you're 70. You might not meet them until you're 40. Like, you'll meet them when you're ready. Like, the universe brings things to you and you arrive on time. You're always on time. It feels late maybe and you're anxious. Uh and you know, like, people don't peak in high school and people don't peak in their 80s. People just live a life, and you can retroactively assign peaks and valleys, but really you're just moving. So I met her, I had tried dating. I unsuccessfully dated about 3 different women after my ex before I met my current wife. And, you know, I mean, we got along, these other women, but now I was wiser. I was like, no, no, no. If you're not like giving me that feeling, I'm not trading this sovereignty without my son for like much. You know, if I'm going to live like a miserable life without my son, I'm certainly not going to like add extra conflict. And so one day I was like kind of down and out, and I got this spam dating app message, and it said coffee meets bagel. And I'm obsessed with drinking coffee, and I'd always like loved bagels. Jewish joke goes here. So I hopped on for some reason and just signed up, and then I forgot about it. And then I got this message like again like a couple of weeks later, and it was from this beautiful girl who I was positive was a bot. Like, I was just like, there's no way. And it said, this girl likes you, write her back. Now, only now do I notice the app was like tricking me. All she did was like not dislike me. It's not Tinder, but like like, she didn't actually go out of
Uh,
her way to say like this guy, but it
uh,
made it seem that way. So I had all this bravado because I'm like, oh, this like beautiful woman who's actually like cool. And in her profile, it said, I love grocery shopping. That's like my favorite hobby. I just love going up and down grocery store aisles. I just do. I like, it's like my zen. And actually, after the divorce and the abduction, I would just do that. I would go late at night to the grocery store and just listen to like podcasts and like go up and down. So we uh I read her back. She really likes me, and then and I like her, and we start texting. And then in one of the texts I say like, "Oh yeah, you know, it's just hard. I like really miss my son." And she's like, "You have a son?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Your profile said you were divorced. It didn't say that you have a son." And I was like, Oh no, because all my profiles were the same on like Bumble, and I wasn't on Tinder, but I was on like all the normal ones. Well, actually, maybe Tinder's normal now, but this is 6, 7 years ago. And and for some reason on that one app, I just forgot to say that I had a son. Like it wasn't me lying. I wasn't trying. I am proud of my son, and I definitely don't want to like falsely deceive any woman I was dating. I'm lucky though. She would never have written me back if it said I had a son. Instead, she said, "All right, well, you got through like one of my gates, and it's too late to slam it shut. So I'll meet you in person. We'll take a long walk, and by the end of the walk, if you haven't convinced me that you're not a complete liar, I'll continue on the date." Which is hilarious. If you know, that's my wife's personality to a T. Like very like she's a businesswoman, but she's fair and she's got a huge heart. So we uh we walked around and we had the best time ever. We stayed out, we just like talked. We barely drank. It wasn't like, one of those like, and then at the end of the night, we had like a soft kiss on the lips that I'll never forget because it was just like pleasant and nice. And I was like, oh, and then I called my mom and I said, oh, I had a date tonight and it went really well. And she's like, you've never called me after a first date. She's like, never. So I just want to let you know that like this is new. Maybe this is like really something. And it just went from there. It was like awesome. So
What does she think
there's
of
more to the
what does she
story.
think
Yeah.
what does she think of your experimentation with psychedelics and ayahuasca in particular and all that? She okay with
Yeah.
that? She's okay with that?
Yeah, she was totally okay with it because she had seen she's famous, but I don't really know her. Chelsea Handler is a famous I want to say like comedian, but she's not really a comedian. She's like a public speaker, toes the line comedian, and
Okay.
she has like a Netflix special now.
Okay.
But anyway, she was very popular for saying she did ayahuasca and it changed her life. It made her nicer and kinder,
Oh,
and so it had planted the seed in my wife's head of like, oh, I want to try that someday, but it's super illegal. And so
oh,
actually, we ended up flash forward many years later. I took her on a vacation and we got to try it together. So
okay. And
yeah,
is it true that you got to eject from both ends when you take it, or no?
actually, no. And this is the most interesting thing. I have now done it 5 total times, and I'm the only person I know who has never had that problem. And I'm also the only person I know who has dutifully followed the exact strict requirements that every single place says to do, which
Oh,
is
no
supposed to go
way.
on this ayahuasca. Yeah. So
Oh,
I eat only white rice and
uh,
only fish and only plantains and only raw almonds. And that's it. And I eat
okay.
that for like 10 days. I cut off all caffeine.
Okay.
The one thing I did cheat on is I did smoke a little weed here and there before I
Okay.
went, which they say not to do, but that
Okay.
didn't bother me. So,
Okay.
yeah. Now,
Did you
don't get me wrong, your stomach gurgles and it's like
Yeah.
unpleasant, but no, I didn't like
Okay.
nothing.
Okay. Did you ever read Carlos Castaneda? I don't know if it's connected spiritually at all, but
No, but every single person tells me to, so I've like dipped my toes and I've read some stuff. I do like it. It definitely gels with me. I'm kind of like at this point where like the whole point of spirituality is to figure out like your compass system and then to live life. So like there's a certain diminishing returns if you get too into like reading about like
right.
spirituality. So I'm
Right.
in this phase now where I'm 42 and I'm like practicing it as much as I can.
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask you because it's one of my interests and it's sort of connected. It's you haven't mentioned it yet, but I just want to get your take on music, the spiritual
Mhm.
dimension of music. Because there's, my favorite era in music is the sort of psychedelic era, and then shortly after the psychedelic era is like the prog rock era, and then you get into punk, which I also like. But it's more the psychedelic.
So we have a lot in common.
It's the late '60s, early '70s. That's what in Britain. That's sort of my scene. And there was a
Cool.
lot of experimentation with drugs. I'm not able to take drugs. I tried mushrooms and I enjoyed it.
Mhm.
But I don't enjoy marijuana or anything like that. I had a very bad experience on marijuana. But I'm not into the drugs, but I'm definitely into like the spiritual stuff, and the connection with music is very mysterious to me even now as a Christian. I converted in 2009. But
Cool.
even now, just the power of music and the spiritual dimension of music. I wanted you to sort of share your perspective. If you ever had any powerful experiences, or do you dabble with making music? Because you said you're an entertainer, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm a musician first and foremost.
Oh, no
Before I
way.
even spoke, yeah, I was.
Ah,
My mom always tells the story like I couldn't speak, but one night I stood up in my crib and in fluent, perfect English sung "I've been working on the railroad" for like an hour while my parents like kept coming in and being like, "Okay, okay, but go back to sleep." To this day, like music is my main thing. So I play
oh,
guitar, drums, bass, piano.
no
I'm
way.
uh, Yeah, I have like 9 albums. I was a
No way.
professional touring musician. Yeah, yeah. No,
Ah,
I love music. Pink Floyd was
ah.
my first favorite band
Me
ever.
too. Yeah,
So
me too.
yeah, like
That was my
we have a
first
lot in
one.
common. I can tell just by your like small. You talk very little, but you summed up my music. I mean, punk rock literally like it's weird because I don't meet a lot of people who like Pink Floyd and the Ramones, but that's like
Yeah, 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 yeah. And I got my
uh,
friend Captain Beefheart over here. I don't know if you can see that's
yeah,
Captain
cool.
Beefheart. So I've got a wide taste and very broad taste in music, but it's so exciting. So yeah, I didn't know you were primarily a musician. That's exciting.
Yeah, well, I was like, so I switched from mainly a musician from like 14 to 26 or 7, and then I became a professional writer for them. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
like, I
yeah,
kind of,
yeah.
and the reason for that is because I don't like staying up late and playing on stages. Like, I'm not stage
Yeah.
fright. I just hate staying up late.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. Well, I've always said that, I would not want to be a performer of any kind because, like when I do the podcast, it's completely spontaneous and there's no script, there's no, and I don't have a boss behind me or anyone telling me what to think, say, or do. So it's very free. But if you belong to Pink Floyd or any other great band, the audience wants to hear that song. They want to hear their favorite
yeah,
song and they want to hear the album
yeah.
and whatever. And I often wonder, like, do they love repeating that? Because when you look at the music videos, it seems like they're really into it. Like any band, it seems like it's not like, oh, I'm at work doing my work now. No, it's like they're feeling it. So maybe people can enjoy performing in a repetitive way. I don't know. What's your perspective?
Yes, you can, and I think mainly it's a call and response and it's the feedback loop. So like
Okay,
even
okay,
if you're
okay.
bored and you're arguing with your spouse, like as soon as the audience is engaged and you're like because you're co-creating at that point, in my opinion.
Okay.
And like it's magical because I remember when I was in a band where we played all of our own songs,
Uh,
we'd close sometimes with a cover of like Smells Like Teen Spirit just because I
Ah,
loved Nirvana growing
yeah,
up.
yeah.
And like people know the words to it, and like all of a sudden you'd see people like light up and just like they start singing with you, and like your
Wow.
goosebumps appear, and like it's
Uh,
so different than when like you're playing a song and everyone's like, "This is cool, but I don't know it," you
yeah.
know, like it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
Okay,
different.
okay. So I understand now
Yeah,
the synergy and that.
yeah. And as far as your original question, I forgot to mention that I'm a lifelong meditator. I've been doing
Okay.
transcendental meditation since I was 9, and
Ah, okay.
it's definitely the most important thing in my life. It's funny that I didn't bring it up because it's just like so. Like I literally wake up every single day and I meditate for 40 minutes, and then I
Ah,
do another 20-minute meditation. I've
ah.
missed the last time I missed one was like 2000, I think,
Okay.
23 years ago.
Wow, wow.
Um, yeah, so I'm
That was pretty big.
and
TM was pretty big, like with those 60s
yeah, my parents.
musicians.
Yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
like my parents would always point out, they're like, this Beatles song is actually about transcendental meditation.
Uh,
So if anything, that was the religion I grew up in. That's why they were so passive about Judaism. Is they were like, Judaism is like a American meets like Israel meets like cultural thing, but like we know the real thing in life is, and this is going to tie into your question, it's the sound. The sound of the mantra, the original
okay.
like sound created the Big Bang. Like
Yeah,
that's the theory. So I
yeah.
do believe that at the essence of everything is sound, and I do think that I've had 2 kids so far, and I have a third coming. They take to music, children, in a way
Mm.
that is like universal, all of them. As a matter of fact, if I saw a kid who didn't like music at a certain age, like a young enough age, I would probably take them to a like psychologist because like it's so weird like to see like every kid just even if they have bad rhythm they just love music like and if you're out in public and you hear live music they like push towards it and I think as we get older we learn to like filter like we filter like spiritual experiences we
Uh,
filter like we call spiritual moments coincidences. Like that's like a convenient, like especially American attitude to be like, no, 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 no. This can be explained in the unexplainable word we use to make sure we stay in like the third dimension and we don't ever go higher. You said you converted to Christianity, and from my understanding of Christianity, this all gels. It's not
yeah,
like
yeah.
Christianity says,
Yeah, it's a very mystical world. Um, there the way that I think about it and the way that the saints talk about it is like just with the symbol of the cross, you've got the horizontal, which is the worldly, and then the vertical, which is the spiritual. So it's that intersection of the two. And we've got, in Christianity, what's unique about Christianity over against, say, Judaism or even Islam, is that we have the Trinity and we have the Incarnation. And the Incarnation is very special to me because, I joined Christianity without believing in the Trinity. I didn't believe in the Incarnation, but I believed in the one true God of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But I joined the church because of the holy sacrifice of the Mass, which is God made flesh present under the appearances of bread and wine. But my priest friend, my monk friend who brought me into the faith, he said, you don't need to believe in the Trinity and the Incarnation, not yet, but we're going to educate you. So I went through an education course, and I had questions, they had answers, and there were books I had to read, and many books I read that I didn't have to read. I just read out of thirst for the knowledge. And so I came to believe in the Trinity and the Incarnation. And what comes with the Trinity and the Incarnation for someone that's just naturally spiritual like you or like me, what comes with that is a bridge between that horizontal dimension, the mundane, and we can sometimes look down our nose and judge people that seem like they're not spiritual, but we're on a spectrum. Like we can live in a very worldly way, or we can live in a very spiritual way that's out of balance, or we can live in balance where we have both. I think you were touching on that earlier, but yeah, the Incarnation is very special for me because of that bridge that it provides and the proximity that it gives me, the accessibility that it gives me to the divine. I don't know how comfortable you are with the notion of the divine. You mentioned the higher self and this notion of I don't know if you believe in reincarnation per se. Do you?
Mm-hmm.
You do?
How do I answer that? So my podcast is called Coffin Talk, and it's a metaphysical podcast where we explore the meaning of death. We talk about what you think happens when you die. And by the way, I almost invariably, when I meet someone as intelligent and interesting as you, I ask them towards the end of your show if you would be willing to come on mine.
Of course. Yeah. Because actually, it's funny. What's funny, I want to interrupt you. What's funny is,
please.
Looking for guests on PodMatch, there was this one very interesting guest, and I saw that he got a couple of reviews from podcasts that he'd been on, and one of them was Coffin Talk, and I'm like, cool. That sounds interesting. I'd like to find out about Coffin Talk. And then lo and behold, I connected with you, and I saw that you were connected with Coffin Talk, so that's pretty cool. So again, I don't believe, like you, I don't believe in coincidence. I don't believe in randomness. I don't believe in chance. I believe that everything happens for a reason. And once again, we have a lot in common there. But it'd be fun to come on and talk about the metaphysical with you, because that's what brought me to God. Exploring ideas in philosophy. And I saw in your bio that you also are interested in philosophy. So that's something we could definitely talk about either on today's show or on your show.
Yeah, and I think that's why when you ask me about reincarnation, like I've interviewed so many guests, especially like past life therapists. I've interviewed a couple, and one of them let me do one for free. So I like
regression.
And that woman I mentioned, past life regression.
Wow, you did
where
it.
You go back and then and it's. I just want to say like the jury's out for me, because here's my problem. I'm convinced that I think I'm this guy Mike, but really there's something else that Mike is a part of. And so to say I have past lives is really silly, because Mike doesn't have past lives, in my opinion. So yes, I believe in reincarnation, but no, I don't buy this like weird me ego thing where you're like, oh, I never die because I have like, and I was Cleopatra. No. You were not Cleopatra, and Cleopatra was not Cleopatra. Like, this is just existence. Like that amoeba and that cell, and like, someone told me this once, this is so random, but for me, it always works. You're not actually sitting on a chair. Electrons are repelling each other, but you're not sitting on a chair. And that's kind of like my answer to all of this is like, you're not you, because you don't even have like a body really. You're really just atoms repelling atoms and like electrons spinning. And like at all times, if you could see through the lens of a quantum physicist, like a burn, center, like one of those like things, you would not see humans, and you wouldn't see like a separation. So this separation is all very fake. So when someone asks me, do I believe in reincarnation? Like, if it's a convenient, quick way to just keep the conversation moving, I'll say like, yes, let's continue. But like, if
Mm.
I'm worried it's going to end in this like, so who were you? And like,
Uh,
then I'm like, no, 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 I don't want to go there because that's like a very, we're never going to stop having war if we keep thinking that like I get mine and you get yours, like if I think that my box of cereal is for me and my family, we're never going to have world peace. So until we can all escape this idea of like being ourselves, Ram Dass is someone I admire a lot, and he
uh.
said you spend the first half of your life becoming somebody so you can spend the rest of your life becoming nobody. And I think that's like the best way to.
Well, it's funny. I just interviewed this morning a gentleman from India, and his name is Das. His last name is Das, and I thought of Ram Dass or whatever his name is. So
Yeah.
yeah, It's funny you mentioned that because I was going to ask you about Hinduism, Buddhism, these sorts of Eastern philosophies and religions. I'm fascinated by them. I'm sympathetic to them because my my Christian worldview is very sympathetic to monism. There's only one thing, it's God, right? And we can't take that too far because God did create, in my Christian perspective,
Yeah.
creation, the world, the universe, and humans, and angels, and dogs and cats and birds and bees and everything. So there is a certain reality to creation, but it's nothing compared to the reality of God. So in a certain sense, I'm very
Hmm.
sympathetic to the monism of the East, where there's just God. And the point of Christianity, I don't know if you know this or not, but the point of Christianity is to die to self and to live in God. So it really is very Eastern at its root, and it's the mystical side of Catholicism that you might not see if you're just browsing through the internet of what people think Catholicism is. But it's very, very mystical in that way, and it has a lot in common with the monism of the East. There are important distinctions to be made. Like I said, I do believe that I am David, that you are Mike. And there's a mystical Judaism that would maybe be more akin to your way of thinking, where we're just sort
Hmm.
of like sparks of the divine or whatever. And but yeah. So that's the end of my TED talk. You can respond to that, but I just want to let you know that
No, I like that. Yeah.
the East is very near and dear to my heart. Although I am a little bit cautious about certain concepts. Obviously, I don't believe in reincarnation and these sorts of things. I don't believe that you and I are mere illusions or anything. I think that we have
Hmm.
reality. It might help you to know that I came to God through hard solipsism, which is basically the mistaken
Yeah.
worldview that I thought I was the only being, a disembodied mind. I thought
Yeah.
I was the God of Buddhism, basically. So that might help you to understand my perspective, where I'm coming from spiritually, and my journey
That's
to
funny.
church.
To me, that is relevant to when you said you had a bad marijuana experience because I think marijuana would be the number one drug to convince you of solipsism.
Oh,
Uh,
really? Oh, really?
yeah,
Okay, okay.
based on my experiences with it, and again, I grew up in the Bay Area, so it's like over there we don't even call it a drug. Parents actually tell kids, please don't drink and drive. It's okay if you smoke. It's
Okay.
that's how like not my parents, just
Yeah.
because they probably will watch this. Uh, but the reason I bring that up is like the friends of mine who have had quote unquote bad trips, either on any drug. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if it's pot or not. I think part of it is that it can really, and again, I'm not speaking about your experience. I just, to me, I find it interesting that most Americans, especially, would not enjoy believing in. I always say the word wrong, but solipsism, is that? Am I saying it
I
correctly?
call it solipsism. The
Solipsism. Yeah. No,
original
you're right.
Latin, it comes from two words: sole ipse, only I am. So
Oh, that's
solipsism.
cool.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
my journey into Catholicism went by way of Western philosophy. I studied starting from the pre-Socratics all the way up through till I hit Descartes. Once I hit Descartes, I was a hard solipsist already, and just coincidentally, he talks about hard solipsism, and he offers a solution, and the solution is basically a leap of faith. Like it's just like, because he hypothesized that maybe our sense perceptions are an illusion caused by a demon or whatever. He had all kinds of hypotheses about how to explain these alleged sense perceptions. I see, I smell, I touch, I taste, and whatever. And there's no rational, philosophical, much less scientific proof that we could offer ever for the validation of the alleged sense perceptions. So for him, he just had to take a leap of faith, and that's what he did. And he just carried on. Of course, God is God. Of course, He's good, and that was it. So that was the escape hatch for me. And then since that time, I've gone on to read a lot of Catholic theologians, bright minds, and philosophers. And I know that we can know with reason that God exists, the God of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, that God exists, the uncaused first cause, and these sorts of things. So yeah, I have a firm grounding now in philosophy and in the reason, but I also maintain the leap of faith into Christianity, which is a faith-based set of beliefs, like like I said, the Trinity, the Incarnation, all kinds of things. Those are faith-based. I could be wrong, I could be wrong about that, but
Yeah.
I can't be wrong about God. Just like you have certain things that you cling to. You have a certain hierarchy of truths in your worldview where it's like, well, I know
Hmm.
for sure I'm not going to ever abandon this. I can't. There's nowhere to go. There's
Yeah.
nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. So for me, that's God, and
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's interesting.
That's really good, and I like that. And I think accountability is like a fun term to throw into this conversation because I think like, well, it's interesting. Like most people, not most. There's no most in the sentence. Many people grow up with a strong religion and then they rebel and then they come back to it. Many people grow up with no religion and feel empty and seek religion
Yeah,
and then they find one that works and then doesn't work. Like we all
yeah,
have like different journeys, but I think most of us splash around in a lot of tubs and at least
yeah,
like dabble or one that just fits like a glove. But ultimately, you're not alone, but you can feel alone, and faith is what kind of brings that to an end. So like I'm like you. I have faith, which is by my definitions means I will not know if I'm right. Like that's
yeah,
very important to me. Like faith isn't like, oh, at some point he or she or it's gonna come and like reveal. No, it's the faith is like a requirement of like the process. And like I said, because I don't believe reincarnation the way Americans especially talk about it, like I don't think after this life I get to like ever be me again. So when you said like, you're you and I'm me, like I agree with you, and I agree that we're in this time space agreement right now and that we're having this real moment. But what I don't think matters is like forgiveness is forgiveness is forgiveness. So like you really can do whatever you want, and my ex really can take my son, and like these things really can happen, and like your life could be a series of heartbreaks after this, but it doesn't mean you should give up your faith, and it doesn't mean it wasn't planned. And that sounds so like saccharine to people, and I think a lot of people pity me because they're like, oh, he needs something because of what happened with his son. But it's not true. It like I don't need anything and I never did need anything. And the experience with my son is an ongoing experience and I learn from it every day and I'm kinder to everyone because of it. And I'm calmer and uh I didn't think I had anger issues because I probably did or didn't, but like once he was taken, I had a lot of anger. So I've
mhm,
decided to work on anger and like I am so much happier now. Like I really think it's interesting because I thought like you only have an anger problem if you like punch people or like like, but no,
mhm.
if things fester inside of you, you have an anger problem, period. And so I was going through this horrible process where like every morning I would wake up and I was just angry with my son's mother and my son's grandfather in particular, because I blamed them and but it's not them and it's not me versus them, and actually I'm just trying to cooperate with the plan.
Are
So
they aware of your podcast and the interviews you do with others like me?
they don't talk to me about anything, and they were super weird even when I lived in Thailand. I mean, I know these people like
Oh,
very well. I
okay.
lived in their home
Oh,
several times for months at a time. So
okay.
like they are they're just so different. Like the culture's different, but also like the family that I married into is
Mm.
every Thai person I've ever met has said they're not actually normal. Like that's
Oh,
like they are elite, wealthy, of like a different, blah blah. I don't want to get into it too
yeah, yeah,
much.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Because again, it's not I'm not saying this is just what I've been told. Like my Thai teacher, I did learn Thai because I wanted to be able to speak
Oh,
to my son just in
wow,
case.
wow.
I'm terrible at it, but I still learned it. And she just told me over and over again. She said, the one thing you'll never understand is that in Thailand, a son and a daughter stay with their mother. Like in all divorces, that's just how it goes. So no one would say it's okay to do what they did, but also no one would ever expect a dad to want a kid as much as you did. Like that's not normal in our culture. So I can see how like her dad just really, her being my ex-wife, really didn't see it coming, that even though I kept saying like, no, 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 you don't get it, like I love my son, like that's just not how Thai families work. So
Mm. I just Googled it.
Yeah.
Thailand allegedly is 93% Buddhist, 5% Muslim, 1% Christian.
Yeah,
Something
they
like
have
that. Something like that.
uh, on the buses and subways and planes, they have seats for monks, for Buddhist
Ah,
monks, and like you're not allowed to sit in them, and
okay.
monks fly for free.
Ah,
So anytime you're on a plane in Thailand and there's someone in an orange like
uh-huh.
get up, 100% like they did not buy their plane ticket and they're flying for free.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. So I do have to wrap it up. I got a couple other
Yeah.
things to do before my other interviews this afternoon, but I really enjoyed meeting you. Uh, now that I've met you, I'm gonna follow some of your links and like listen to your music from the good old days. You have some links to your music somewhere?
Yeah. Everything on my website,
Your
mikeyup.com,
writings, you have books,
everything.
you have
Yeah.
movie. Did you make
Everything's there.
movies? Did you make movies?
Yeah. Yeah, and actually I made a funny, I think it's funny. I made webisodes on philosophy. I made
No
20,
way.
and one of them is on solips.
No way. Solipsism.
So I will send you in the email chain we had.
Yeah, yeah. Send
I would
me the
love to
link.
see what you think.
Yeah, and so we'll talk about by email. We'll figure out a date and a time to do your coffin talk. That would be fun.
For sure. I would love to have you on. You're 100% booked. So.
Cool. Thank you so much. So you're always welcome to come back, chat anytime on my podcast. But like I said, since I've joined PodMatch, like my calendar is full. It's like the first time I've been doing this for 6 years, but this is a first time where it's like I don't have to go begging people to come on my show. I've got like everyone booked solid, so it's really fun, and it's great to meet you. You're my first PodMatch guest, so
oh wow, that's really cool.
The first of many, yeah. So I'm meeting a lot of really nice and interesting and open-minded people on PodMatch. So I really appreciate it. So we'll talk soon. Take care of yourself. Is there anything else that you wanted to add that maybe we didn't touch on, a bullet point that you wanted to put in?
No, just if anyone's interested, please go to mikeyup.com, and I write a free weekly email that I would love for people to sign up for, because it's how I sell my books and stuff like that. And I just had a novel come out. It's dedicated to my son. It's called Ardor, and it's about psychics. And I love life. I love this podcast. I had a great time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll put the link in the show notes here. Okay.
Cool. Awesome.
God bless you, and we'll talk soon.
You too.
Thanks for coming on. Bye.